Okay, good morning, everyone. Hope you can hear me okay. This is Jim Wonderman, the President and CEO of the Bay Area Council. We have a really exciting program today, and we have a record-breaking audience to go along with it. So folks are still signing up, but we've got a lot of you on, and hopefully this will all go well. We actually had to turn a lot of people away who wanted to participate in this. So obviously a lot of interest in what we'll be talking about today. You will have opportunities to raise questions as we go through the presentations. So there's a Q&A feature on your screen, so that's where you go. And with so many folks, there may be a lot of questions. We'll do our best to get to you. This is being recorded as well, so we will share a link with everyone who was able to see this and others who weren't later on. Why we're here today. So we're introducing Link 21, which is a new integrated rail network serving 21 counties in the Northern California megaregion, and to talk about a new report by the Bay Area Council Economic Institute that explores Link 21's signature project, the building of a second Transbay rail crossing. The Bay Area Council is really proud of the work that we've done over the years in forming and helping to define the Northern California megaregion and bring together so many incredible partners to realize the huge opportunity the megaregion promises. Just a number of years ago, this was just something people kind of talked about a little bit here and there, and it's really exciting to see it come together, and it holds so much promise for the future economically, in terms of how people can live a better life, and we can reduce greenhouse gases and pollution, and really become one very, very successful region that actually exists today, but is not as functional as it should be because it doesn't have the transportation system that it needs. So that's what we'll be talking about today. Before we get, we're going to have a couple of presentations, and we have a great panel. But before we get to that, we have the great honor of welcoming our California State Transportation Agency Secretary, David Kim, who most of you know was appointed by Governor Newsom back in 2019. He brings decades of experience and incredible transportation leadership at the local, state, and federal level. David, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. David is from Southern California, and so now he's going to have the opportunity to talk about the future of Northern California transportation. So this is going to be his signature legacy project, and of course he's promised me complete funding for all of this. It's not that expensive, as we all know. So thank you in advance, David, for that commitment. So now that I've sandbagged you, let me thank you for joining us, and we appreciate to hear your comments.
Well, thank you very much, Jim. It is great to be with all of you, and record crowd. That is impressive, but not surprising. And Jim, although I spent many years of my life in Southern California, I'm actually a Northern Californian. I spent my formative years in Davis. I was born in the Bay Area, Vallejo to be exact, and I lived in San Francisco from age 2 through 4. An awfully long time ago, but I still remember it. It was on Dubose Avenue or Street, which I think has been gentrified by now. But in any event, I do have Bay Area roots, and proud of it. And again, it's just great to be with all of you, and really appreciate this opportunity to say a few words on Link 21 and, of course, the new Transbay crossing. And I think what you're discussing today is so critically important for the future of the Northern California megaregion. And as far as we're concerned, a second Transbay crossing is not just one singular project, but we think of it as a major investment that will literally transform the entire megaregional transportation network. Now, I try like crazy to avoid using the phrase game changer, but that's exactly what it is, a game changer. Now, you might remember back in 2018, we put out the California State Rail Plan, and it really put a spotlight on a couple of things that are relevant to what you're discussing today, and that is expanding regional rail capacity across the Bay and tying it together with other rail and transit investments. And if we could do all of these things, we're going to have a fully integrated network that spans the Bay. And of course, that would bring about much better travel options. It would save people time. And very importantly, it would provide better access to more jobs and other destinations. And of course, it's a green transportation choice that reduces carbon emissions. So all of us in the Newsom administration are excited to partner with you on the Link 21 effort through our ongoing support of Caltrain, Capital Corridor, and BART. And that includes TIRCP funding that helped with this report. And we really look forward to hearing the discussion today. And so with that, thank you so much, Jim, for having me here today. And we look forward to today.
Well, thanks very much for joining us, Secretary, Mr. Secretary, and we really appreciate your support and your vision for the future, and look forward to working with you and your administration on making this a reality. So thank you very, very much. And as you noticed, this second crossing, it's not just a project unto itself. It really is a way of linking together the region's various transportation rail systems, and we're very, very excited. So thank you very much again. So in the interest of having everyone who's on the webinar today understand Link 21, we have Sadie Graham, who's BART's director for Link 21, and Camille Sao, the Capital Cars manager for the program, to make a presentation and bring us up to speed. So Sadie and Camille, take it away.
Thank you, Jim. First, I want to thank Secretary Kim for those great remarks. I think Sadie would agree with me. Anytime you want to come and do a presentation, we would love to have you. I also want to thank CalSTA for the funding they provided to make the BASI report possible, and to Bay Area Council for hosting this great webinar, and for all of you who are attending for showing your interest in the Link 21 program. So can we have the slides, please? Yeah, next slide would be great. So, when most people think of the 21 county Northern California megaregion, they don't realize that this is the 5th largest megaregional economy in the United States. And it is critical that we have an efficient transportation system to keep it functioning well. The health of our economy, access to housing and job opportunities, our quality of life, and meeting air quality and public health goals absolutely depend on our ability to move people and goods effectively. We already have great existing rail services that serve people from all around the megaregion, but there is great potential to serve a lot more people by improving the rail network, as the Secretary described just a minute ago. Next, please. So Link 21's vision is to help transform the passenger rail network into a faster, more integrated system. And in 15 or more years from now, regional rail is going to look different. I mean, we're going to be operating zero emission, modern vehicles, not the Amtrak trains that you're familiar with today. And they will improve the passenger experience significantly. So we are just one of several programs underway to improve rail travel in the region. We're working with the state and coordinating with our regional rail partners, including but not limited to Altamont Corridor Express and the San Joaquins and Caltrain, to work toward this common goal of making rail travel easier. I want you to think about a future where someone can go to their nearest station, it could be in Stockton, Sacramento, down the peninsula, in Monterey even, and get anywhere on the rail network with ease within a reasonable amount of time, and at a time of day or night that they want to travel. Next slide, please. So as you know, one of the key projects in Link 21 is the crossing. And it is located in the Transbay corridor between Oakland and San Francisco, which is the busiest, most congested corridor in our megaregion. Multiple studies have identified the importance of such a crossing, including the 2018 State Rail Plan, citing it as a key missing link in our rail network. So the Link 21 program team is currently working hard to study the potential benefits of such a crossing and other improvements that should be included in the program. Next slide, please. So this is a high-level timeline for the program. We're just at the beginning phase, what we call phase 0. And in the next several years, we're going to be developing the program with input from our partners and stakeholders. So the schedule will be updated as we have more information, but we're anticipating that our key projects will be implemented by the year 2040. I know that seems like a long way off, but wherever we can deliver early wins, we will definitely seek a way to do that. And we've heard from many of you that that's exactly what you'd like us to do. Next slide, please. So we have 4 overarching program goals. The first and foremost on the left there is transforming the passenger experience. This is a foundational goal of the program because without it, we cannot achieve the other 3 goals, which are enhanced community and livability, enhance community livability, support economic growth and global competitiveness, and advance environmental stewardship and protection. So underlying these 4 goals are 12 objectives, and underlying those are our performance metrics by which we will be evaluating our program alternatives. And I want to point out that addressing equity is a specific objective underlying each of these goals that is really important to the program. And I'm going to turn it to Sadie to talk more about that.
Thank you, Camille, and thanks everyone for having me today. So really, one of our main goals is also to make sure that Link 21 is an equitable program, and we've made a commitment to advancing equity. And this is really in recognition that large infrastructure projects have really had disparate negative impacts on systemically marginalized communities over the past. So communities of color, low-income communities, non-English speakers. So really what we're trying to do is ensure that equity is a principle that will be integrated into the process and the outcomes of this project. So to do so, and I'm sorry, I should have told you next slide. To do so, really what we want to make sure we're doing is that we're co-creating this process, this project with those priority populations that I mentioned. So this is with the goal of contributing to a prosperous region, one where everyone can really participate and benefit from that prosperity. And this is especially important to those who have been previously negative impacted and transit dependent riders. Next slide, please. So forging strong partnerships is also one of the things that we realize we have to do. We have to do this early. We intend to have a sustained communications with all of our partners. There are literally millions of stakeholders for this project. So we're working with the guidance of the state that we've talked about, coordinating with the state rail plan update. We're coordinating with our local and regional rail operators and funding partners. And particularly, we are and will continue to be working with local jurisdictions. And this is really with the understanding that jurisdictions are really indispensable partners when it comes to understanding and addressing the land use policy and environmental impacts of a Link 21 program. Recognizing things such as displacement, or like Secretary Kim talked about a little bit earlier, gentrification, and making sure that this program is, again, having that equity as a primary focus when it comes to implementation. So next slide, please. So we in California have really ambitious commitments to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And ambitious commitments really mean that we need ambitious solutions like this program. Our region needs this project to achieve these goals, to allow individuals to leave their cars at home. MTC Plan Bay Area found that in addition to being the most cost-effective mega project, that Link 21 is needed for the region to meet its greenhouse reduction goals by reducing the number of cars on the road. Next slide, please. So as Camille mentioned, Link 21 is going to provide faster, frequent, more reliable service. So it ultimately will provide transportation as a choice for passengers. So we're going to be creating direct access within the region, what we're calling more one-seat rides. And imagine, as Camille said, that having Link 21 as a choice, whether you're a transit dependent individual or a car owner, this program really opens up all kinds of opportunities for trips that have not previously been available. It has the potential to link affordable housing with higher paying jobs. It has the potential to enable transit accessible job destinations throughout the mega region. And we know that when we provide people with choices, the economy in the region will thrive and prosper. Next slide, please. So in preparation for future funding requests that luckily Jim already keyed us up for that one, we are estimating the economic impact of a project of this magnitude and what it will have on the economy. We've used APTA's calculation to estimate that the return of this transportation project is 5 times what has been invested. So based upon year of expenditure dollars, we're anticipating that the program will bring 377,000 jobs and $145 billion of direct and indirect spending to the economy, which will be a contribution to a strong and sustained economic impact. Next slide, please. So thank you. We recently unveiled our new website. We encourage you to visit it, sign up for updates, and there's also a survey there that you can take to help inform the project. And with that, I will give it back to you, Jeff.
So thank you very much, Sadie, and thank you, Camille. And I think you'll be staying on with us. We're starting to accumulate some questions, and you may be the best folks to answer them. But let's go to the next presentation, and we will be doing our best to respond to questions. And so with that, to present on the findings of the recent report that was released by the Bay Area Council Economic Institute. It's called the Megaregional Case for a New Transbay Rail Crossing. Please welcome the Institute's Executive Director, Jeff Belisario, and Research Analyst, Greer Cowan. Thanks, Jeff and Greer.
Thanks.
Let's go.
Thanks so much, Jim. So we're going to get the slides going here, but I think as a preface, we're going to talk a lot about the mega-regional economic backdrop, both for the Transbay crossing and for the Link 21 program, but we're going to do it extraordinarily quickly as we get the slides up here. So I'll highlight that you can find the report at bayareaeconomy.org, and many of the charts that you'll see here today will be on our Twitter at Bay Area Economy. So you can go to the next slide, please. So I want to say that we did start this project before we even knew what COVID-19 was, and a lot of the data points that we have are pre-pandemic, but we don't think San Francisco is going to go away. We don't think commutes are going to go away. And a lot of what we had pre-pandemic pointed to a broader mega region. So I'm going to run through that and then hand it over to Greer. So next slide, please. So just a bit more context on the map that Sadie and Camille presented. And here we show you our 21 counties and the 4 subregions. We show you the rail map as it stands today. And across those 21 counties, we have nearly 13 million people in population. The context there is the LA metro mega region has 18 million, in New York, 20 million. So a significant population, large job base, nearly 6 million jobs pre-pandemic, and a combined GDP of over $1 trillion. So a lot of zeros there, a bit more context. If the mega region were its own country, it would be the 16th largest economically, right between Mexico and Indonesia. So a large population, large economy, and one we think is getting more connected. Next slide. But I think here, and again, we show the map, and one of the key features that we were watching prior to the pandemic and even now is that there's this jobs and population mismatch in terms of its growth within those 21 counties. And if you look on the east side of the Transbay corridors, here calling it East Bay, Northern San Joaquin Valley, Sacramento area, the majority of the mega region's population growth is happening to the east. If you look at the total population percentages, 58% of our population growth is happening within the 9-county Bay Area, but 71% of the job growth is happening in those 9 counties. So that job population mismatch is causing more people to commute in. Next slide, please. And I think one of the things that is driving that, and I think everyone knows this, is home prices. So home prices are very disparate across our 21 county mega region. And I think one thing I do want to point out is that the delta between Bay Area and non-Bay Area is growing. Home prices are up everywhere, but if you just look at Alameda versus Sacramento County, the difference in home price back in 2012 was $200,000. In 2020, it's now $500,000. So this population shift that we're seeing is really in search of affordability. Next slide, please. So I mentioned this, the growth in commuters coming into the 9 counties. And here we show in total, nearly 200,000 people commuting from outside the 9 county Bay Area into it for work pre-pandemic. And then you can see those numbers growing. Numbers are much smaller going in the opposite direction. And that's one of the real long-term benefits we think of Link 21, is that you get a more equal balance of jobs and housing across the region. Next slide. And then when we look at who's commuting and how they're commuting, and I'll point you to the right side of the screen here on the gold little box, the transit share of commuters coming into the region is just 4%. So most people commuting in and making those long commutes, they don't have a transit option, or the transit option is not great. Compare that to everyone else working in the Bay Area, 12% take transit. So we think a large opportunity here for mode share shift if we have a rail network that is more competitive versus the car. Next slide. And then, taking all this together, and here we show commute times 2018 versus 2010, and I'll point you to the right side of the screen. That most orange bar is commutes over 50 minutes, and kind of no matter where you're commuting to or from, your commutes are getting longer. So there's more traffic on the road pre-pandemic, particularly if you're working in the 9 county Bay Area, your commutes are getting longer. And if you're working in San Francisco and San Mateo County, that 50+ segment has gone from 15% of the workforce to nearly a quarter of the workforce from 2010 to 2018. So the backdrop here is that commutes were getting longer, more people were moving around. We were becoming much more connected as an economic unit in the Northern California mega region. Next slide. But I know what you're thinking, Jeff. You just showed me a lot of numbers from 2018 and 2019. That's all pre-pandemic. What about remote work? How is that going to change this dynamic? And we do think the trends will change, but we don't think they change forever. We still think people will be moving around for work, for business trips, for leisure. And I'll let Greer talk a little bit about what we're watching during the pandemic, and then what we might see post-pandemic.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So as Jeff mentioned, sort of in addition to the analysis that he just explained about how the megaregional economy was connected pre-COVID, we've also been tracking some preliminary data points to shed light on how the post-pandemic megaregional economy might take shape. So first off, we looked at office job growth over the course of 2020 across the 4 different subregions of the megaregion. And as you'll see on this slide, we found that office jobs are recovering faster in the Sacramento area than the Bay Area. So this chart shows job growth across 3 sectors that predominantly employ people in office jobs, so information, finance, and professional services. And you'll see that the jobs have recovered faster to pre-pandemic levels in the Sacramento area. So this indicates an accelerated disbursement of office jobs throughout the megaregion. You can go to the next slide. We've also looked at rent costs over the course of 2020. So we found that rent grew faster outside of the San Francisco Bay Area than in other metros within the megaregion. So as you'll see, some of the major metros within the San Francisco Bay Area actually saw rents fall significantly, while Stockton, Sacramento, and Salinas all saw the fastest growing rents in the megaregion over the course of 2020. So this trend shows the beginnings of a shift in housing preferences away from the San Francisco Bay Area to other parts of the megaregion. Next slide. So this map sort of further exemplifies that shift in housing preference that's playing out. So it shows change of address data from USPS. So a red dot means more people moved their address away from the city than to the city over the course of the pandemic, while a green dot means more people moved to the city than away from the city. And so if you look in the Northern California megaregion area, you'll see more people have changed their address away from the metros in the Bay Area, that sort of cluster of red dots there, whereas the reverse is true in Sacramento. So you'll see the small green dot indicating that more people relocated their address to Sacramento than away from Sacramento. So these data points sort of indicate the megaregion may be moving towards having a more dispersed workforce and population coming out of the pandemic. And if jobs and people do continue to become more dispersed across the megaregion, then for the economy to operate efficiently, the region will need a rail system to support the growing demand in intercity travel between these multiple hubs of employment and population growth throughout the megaregion. And the rail system will need to support not just commutes, but also travel driven by business trips, recreation, healthcare services, education, et cetera. But when we look at where we are today in terms of our rail system, and especially comparing it to the reach and efficiency of rail systems in peer megaregions in the US, we see that the Northern California megaregion is currently more limited in terms of commute shed. So the shaded white area on these maps shows locations that are accessible from each city's downtown within 1 hour of travel. And San Francisco is more limited than the 3 peer megaregions shown here. And so ensuring the economic resiliency and competitiveness of the Northern California megaregion is tied to ensuring that we have a transit system that competes with these peers. Next slide. So our report outlines a vision for creating a rail system that does deliver intercity transit travel in Northern California that's competitive with other regions based on planned and envisioned projects across the megaregion. And as this map shows, if the Transbay bottleneck is alleviated with a new rail crossing, then it allows for the expansion of the rail network across the entire megaregion. So the new crossing not only supports the San Francisco Bay Area market, which we believe will continue to be a big travel market in the long term, but it also catalyzes investments that improve the efficiency and access to transit in other locations in the megaregion that are poised to grow coming out of the pandemic. Next slide. So sort of in short, early trends show that housing and jobs are shifting throughout the megaregion, and that underscores the importance of efficient passenger rail connectivity across the megaregion. And the new Transbay crossing is key to unlocking not just a new connection into San Francisco, but also is a catalyst for other investment across the megaregion. And together, those projects can create better transit access to new markets in the megaregion. And while San Francisco will remain an in-demand market for travel in the wake of the pandemic, the early trends in population shifts to other parts of the megaregion show that demand for trips to and from other locations in the megaregion is also likely to get bigger. And this wider travel market will be driven not just by commutes, but also intercity business, recreation, et cetera. And Link 21 sets the region up to deliver those intercity trips of various purpose between locations that are currently underserved by transit. And with that, I'll pass it back to Jim, and we'll move into the panel discussion. Thanks.
Thanks, Greer, and thank you, Jeff. And we're about those both great presentations, and I think now folks can really understand, what's being planned and the context for all of this. And I think we can't help but be excited about the potential for it. So we have a great group of transportation and business leaders now to form a panel to talk about the importance of the project and its implications for future economic growth and mobility in the region. And then we also are piling up a number of really good questions. And so what we're going to try to do is intersperse some questions that I'll have of the panelists, and then see if we can take, and I'll try to group some of these questions so that we can get through them. And I'm going to ask all of the panelists to try to answer as quickly as you can, because we have a lot of ground to cover in a very short period of time. So join me in welcoming BART General Manager Bob Powers, the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority Managing Director Rob Padgette, Oakland Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce CEO Barb Leslie, and Greater Sacramento Economic Council CEO Barry Broome. Thank you for joining. I'll start with you, Bob, and of course the Bay Area Council. I always throw in that we take pride in the fact that the Bay Area Council was the group that created BART way back in the 1950s. So we're excited about that. It's come a long way since that time, but now we're looking at the future. My question is, Bob, what's your vision of the future? Up to and through 2040, and the role that you and the service that BART provides going into the mega region, and what's the implication?
Yeah, Jim, I think a couple of themes on that answer. One is a more complete rail network throughout the mega region. That would be number one. And I would say the other piece is that rail network would be the most the first choice for you and I, as opposed to driving. So a vision for me would be for a rail system that you and I could get up in the morning, bike to our local station, walk to our local station, take the bus, board your rail, and be at your destination in a reasonable amount of time. And if you're taking connections, the connections would be there on time. They would be frequent. The wayfinding would be clear. The station design, the layout would be intuitive. And most importantly, Jim, I think to just focus on is the rail network needs to be accessible to all, and it needs to be affordable for all. And so that would be, if I could fast forward to 2040, that's what I would hope the mega region's rail system would look like.
Very, very exciting. I think we would all second that vision. So let me turn to you, Rob. When you're thinking about Capital Corridor in 2040, what is your vision for the future service and the role your line plays in the mega region? Obviously a central one. And I'll hit you with one of the questions that came up. Are we envisioning an electrified line for the Capital Corridor?
Well, that's a hard question. To start with the hard one. Thanks, Jim, and appreciate the presentation by Greer and Jeff, and in particular, the comments about the acceleration of a lot of trends that we're seeing because of COVID, and I think that reinforces the need for a project like this one. In terms of a vision for where we are in the future, I would say for sure a faster, more reliable service than we see today. You're going to see a service that includes zero emission vehicles. So we're not going to have the same vehicles that we see today using the Amtrak vehicles. You're going to see technology help us bridge some of these artificial barriers that exist today with things like fare technology that changes across services. And then lastly, and Bob talked a lot about this, you're going to see an integration of rail services across the region. You have physical barriers that exist now. If you live or work on the peninsula and you're trying to get to Davis or you're trying to get to Sacramento, that's a pretty difficult trip. And in our vision, that becomes a really easy decision to make, where you get on at a station and you get off at a station and you're not worried about who operates that service along the way, but it's a much easier trip. And I'll hit the electrification issue head on and just mention that an important partner in all of this will be Union Pacific. They own the right-of-way that we operate on. And we're going to work closely with the freight railroads when we look forward on this project and figure out a lot of those hard questions.
Yeah, a number of the questions get to the sharing of the line between freight and passenger rail and how we'll accommodate that. So hopefully we can maybe get into some of the specifics. I know we don't know all the answers at this point, but we're out to accomplish a lot, and we'll have to figure out how to create a system that can accommodate everything. Barb Leslie, you must be really excited about this. Oakland sits right at the crossroads of a lot of the existing systems, and I can only imagine the potential for the future for Oakland. How do you see this fitting into and expanding Oakland's economic future?
Great. Well, thank you, Jim, for having me on the panel today. And I really do appreciate the opportunity to convey the importance of this plan for Oakland. As you mentioned, we have a great geographic advantage as well as access to most of our regional transportation systems. We are clearly the economic engine for jobs in the East Bay. And yet, as has been mentioned previously, the disconnecting systems really don't provide the seamless transportation experience for our workforce, those living here, working in Oakland and working outside of Oakland, clearly for our residents or anyone who chooses to visit Oakland. So Oakland's job growth, clearly pre-pandemic, our commercial and residential production pre-pandemic was at an all-time high. We don't believe there's any reason post-pandemic, particularly if you look out more than a few years, that we won't see more growth in the decades to come. And we need now to plan to ensure that we're ready for those increases in density in our downtown, which we absolutely look forward to and want to see happen. And we really want to be able to leverage the assets we have across Oakland so that we can grow our job space citywide and do so equitably, which we're very happy to hear is a very important part of the plan itself. So a high functioning transportation system is key to all of those successes.
Well, thanks, Barb, and thank you for your leadership and exciting things that are happening in Oakland, and also, of course, Mayor Schaaf. We're just seeing a lot of the things we always talked about happening, and this will certainly aid and abet the cause and show people a vision for the future. So thank you. So Barry Broome, Sacramento, and you must have appreciated the slide that Greer showed and Jeff showed, showing the increase in folks and jobs heading into Sacramento. I think you're the only part of the state that's actually growing in population at this time. And so congratulations to you. You've been working hard on attracting business and companies to Sacramento, and we've been pleased to be your partner in doing that rather than see them leave, in some cases, leave the state. I guess some folks would say, well, wow, Sacramento, we're going to do a crossing of the bay between San Francisco and Oakland, and here Sacramento sitting 80, 90 miles to the east. How does that connect? How important is it to see this Transbay crossing happening? What does it mean to you for the future of Sacramento region?
Yeah, well, first off, we always, we're Californians first. So it's good for California. Whatever is good for California is good for the state capital. Two, we're now sharing almost 25% of our workforce between the greater Sacramento region and the Bay Area. So as that number starts to push over 200,000 people, Berkeley graduates, UCSF graduates, partnerships through the UCs. So really the Bay Area and Sacramento, whether it's capital, people, talent, is becoming more and more one economy. So the less friction on the work shed, the better it is for all of us and all of California. And we're very committed to defending and standing up for California. We know Texas is a nice place. We think we have a lot more to offer, including rights. We always remind people you get rights when you're in California. And I think watching the Bay Area recover and a vision for the Bay Area is very important to us and very important to California, and we'll benefit from that as we always do. So we're very excited to be a partner on this.
Thank you very much. Let me throw this question out really quickly. This general question around this accommodation of freight and passenger rail, and the Martinez, the bridge, the Benicia Martinez Bridge, comes into question. How are we going to accommodate all of this rail traffic in order to achieve the vision? Whoever feels you can answer that best at this point, maybe Rob.
Yeah, I'll start, and if others want to add to it, and just to reinforce the Sacramento comment, right now 60% of our riders, and this is in the COVID period, are getting on or off at the Sacramento Valley Station, and they're going in both directions. So there are people who live in Sacramento, come down to the Bay Area, and the reverse of that, where you have people that work up in Sacramento. And so, you know, connecting these economic centers, it's hard to overstate the significance of that. In terms of the freight issue, we have a very good relationship with Union Pacific. We work in partnership already today on joint investments in the rail network. The state of California invested heavily in the 1990s in the rail network between Sacramento and Oakland, and in fact owns the rights to 20 slots because of those investments. And the thing that this project will bring is it will help us look at these really big issues. And the reason this is a program is it is much more than just a new link. It is all the stuff that we have to do to feed into that link, including changes to the bridge, and including potential dedicated passenger right-of-way that can let us make these connections and take advantage of improvements that we're making across the bay. But it will be a work in progress. The freight partnership is super important to Capitol Corridor, and we'll look forward to working through all those details in the coming years.
Great, thank you. Let me turn it back to you, Bob. You know, we've been the Transbay rail crossing. It's not a new idea. We've been talking about this for some time. What's different now, and what do you think? What do you think will push this forward? How do we make this happen?
Well, I think getting it the approach that the region has taken. Two things there, Jim. One is the mega region look at this. It went from just a rail crossing, you know, years and years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you know, just a link between, you know, San Francisco and Oakland. It really now is this mega region look. And you heard from Greer about the economics of such an event and such a portfolio of projects, what that would have on the region. So I think that's changed. And then I think the other thing that's changed is the way that the project is looking at this, the way the region is looking at this from a business case perspective, which is new to the Bay Area, you know, that Camille and Sadie talked about in their presentation. And then with the focus on equity and getting out to the communities now, you know, at the beginning of this effort, partnering with the communities and the local elected officials, I think those are two fundamental changes that have, you know, that are changed since, you know, 20 years ago. And I think those two will really drive this project and move it forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, you know, it's just very exciting to think of the totality of this compared to, you know, looking at it as kind of an independent project. Talk a little bit more, maybe Rob and Bob, about a linked rail and transportation network for the Bay Area and Sacramento and the mega region. You know, this is something we have been talking more about since COVID-19, and you know, we need to recover systems that are now experiencing, you know, record low riderships when we'd like to see the opposite. So as we bring this back, we're talking a lot about, you know, creating a true network. How do you see that coming together?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, you know, part of it is doing things today that we can do to change some of the artificial barriers, and some of that's with fare technology. We're already in close partnership with BART and work on syncing our schedules to make that easier. But the other thing is filling in some of those gaps. And I noticed in one of the questions we had, someone commented that they go to Placer County and live on the peninsula, and how difficult that trip is today because it requires a trip on Caltrain, and Caltrain doesn't quite connect to Capitol Corridor. And so the whole idea here is to fill in those gaps, but then to remember all the other things that make that trip hard to make. And that includes fare technology, schedule coordination, all those little details that are a big part of what sometimes gets in the way of travel in the region.
And just to add a little bit of, Jim, maybe a different flavor to that answer as well, is the intersection of land use and transportation. And so, you know, with the affordable housing crisis, the slides that Greer talked about, and, you know, the rents moving, you know, the affordable housing is really pushing people out from the core centers, you know, and it's really this mega region now. And this whole series of programs is going to really kind of, bring back together land use and transportation for a long-term benefit to the mega region here. And that can't be underestimated enough, that this affordable housing crisis has really pushed the housing way out. And we're trying to, bring those two elements back together as part of this mega region project.
And Jim, if I could just add one more comment onto Bob's addition there, land use. And you mentioned this earlier, we want to keep firms in California. And I spent a lot of time working on the Northeast Corridor prior to relocating California. And on the Northeast Corridor, what you'll see is you'll have a company that's, say, in New York, a high cost area. They'll have another office in New Haven or in Philadelphia. And I really think that will be a big change here. So if companies that maybe are having a hard time attracting employees on the peninsula are able to stay in California, maybe they have one office in Sacramento, another office in San Jose, and make an easy trip, we can keep them here. And that's going to really be a benefit to the state as a whole.
That's a great point. Hey, Barb, we're talking about a project that runs, we're looking at 2040, although there's a number of comments about how we accelerate it. But, from your context, how do you, stay focused and stay engaged in something that's going to take this long? Because, we like quick answers, and this won't happen quickly if we start today.
First off, yeah, because I'm not sure I'll be here in 2040, but I think we've been talking a lot about an integrated transportation system. We need an integrated advocacy effort for a plan of this magnitude. So, the steps that are being taken now to lay the groundwork, the city of Oakland is part of the Link 21 jurisdictional working group. Obviously, that's a really important component to stay abreast of what's happening. Our mayor is supportive of obviously the crossing, as well as has advocated for MTC to include it in the Planned Bay Area 2050. I think organizations like ours to stay sort of up to date and inform our constituencies are really important. And then obviously as elected leadership changes over time, that we continue to have that particular working group and those levers all working towards sustaining the conversation and to sustaining the advocacy. In Oakland too, specifically, Oakland's about to embark on our general plan update, which is a sort of decade-long conversation around land use policy and transportation and all those efforts that need to be thought of collectively to ensure that the synergy in our economic development continues. And this needs to be an important component. And again, the groundwork has been laid, and I think it just is up to the partners to continue to work towards that effort.
Thanks. Barry, I can't see you, but I believe that you're there. The data that the report showed gave a little bit of the flavor of kind of what's happening statistically in Sacramento. But, why don't you take a couple of minutes and just kind of explain, what is happening in Sacramento? Why is it happening? And how is your organization and others, working to change the nature of Sacramento and make it more of a destination for jobs and economic activity in the future?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Well, we have 45 CEOs on our board that have made multi-year commitments to the organization. We're technically we'll be 6 years old in August, so we're still kind of a startup. We weren't around in the 50s, so we don't have any real great legacy achievements just yet. But I think the big shifts have been, the leadership of Daryl Steinberg in the city. We've landed a second major league sports teams. So the lifestyle and the amenities are being built.
I think Barry froze. He was so excited to give his report on Sacramento, it blew out the internet in the whole eastern region here. So I think maybe we'll continue. We'll get back to Barry as soon as we can. There was a couple of questions on, and I don't know if you're prepared to answer these or not, but on the Dumbarton corridor, as well as a question about Marin and Sonoma counties. And, is there a vision? Obviously, in the Dumbarton, there very much is, and it's part of the map. In the case of Marin, is there a desire or a possibility of connecting this up?
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll be happy to take that first. You know, the thing to remember on this project is that this is a lot more than Capital Corridor. So Capital Corridor and BART are embarking on this in partnership. Capital Corridor is really intending to represent the regional rail interests, which go far beyond our own service. And so we will be engaging with stakeholders across the mega region, inclusive of agencies that are operating today. And that's part of why in this initial step that we heard about, we're developing the program so that we can really, as a region, come together on ideas for what that might look like. And it will incorporate lots of these other efforts and agencies across the region.
Are there strategies that you folks think of to enhance the timeline? I mean, is there a way to make 2040, 2030, or 2035?
You know, I'll add one thing here from the perspective of a regional rail operator is this project is going to bring a lot of eyes on the Northern California mega region's rail network, and it will help accelerate other efforts too. So in my eyes, this is not a light switch where in 2040 we turn it on and there's a new link and we're good to go. I think what we're likely to see is all sorts of improvements along the way that are identified by this effort and are perhaps smaller in scale, but are part of a larger program. So you're going to see improvements to Capital Corridor and other agencies that eventually feed into this new link. So look forward to some of those even in the coming years. We're already working hard to improve a lot of that.
And Jim, the other, just to add, you know, on how we might, I think acceleration and, 2040 is a long time off. So I think of it, I break it down into, steps. And the first step obviously is to get, shovel ready, if we can use that term, right? Which is, the environmental document, the record of decision, and all of the environmental terms that go with that. The key there, two keys there. One is the outreach right now that we're doing with the communities and bringing the communities, listening to what they have to say, their concerns, their thoughts, bringing that into the discussion. That's key. And then our partnership, on these forums and others with the local agencies, the local jurisdictions there, so that when we get that environmental document, that record of decision, everybody is lined up behind it. And then the other part, obviously, is, people like you, Jim Wonderman, and Secretary Kim and others, to help with the funding. It's about $1 billion in talking to our project team to get through the environmental document. So the sooner we can get through the environmental document, get to a record and get into, that's key. But so I break it up into those little baby steps, if you will. And so, your advocacy, Secretary Kim's, the folks in Sacramento, the folks in Washington, D.C., I think that'll be a key as well.
You're looking through the questions and comments, there's so much excitement about this because of the huge transformational nature of it. And so if I could stop being the moderator for a second and join the panel, I would offer that, this is an opportunity to kind of create a caucus within Congress and maybe within the state legislature, because it affects so many districts and so many people, to really push this forward. Because if we're able to get this done, it's going to have a tremendous positive impact on a lot of the things we're really trying to do economically and environmentally. And so it's worth kind of pushing it forward. And I think if we advocate with that kind of focus, we can have much more success and maybe a faster set of outcomes. Let me get back quickly to Barry. You were so excited there when I get through that softball that you blew out the Wi-Fi. But go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Yeah, hopefully it'll hold up. Yeah, so we're about 6 years old, 45 CEOs on the board, 20 public officials, and we've really transform the culture here to be built around investment and jobs. I think a lot of people in Sacramento have feared growth, watching some of the impacted nature of San Francisco and LA, but we're on a much smarter trajectory. We have double-digit growth in college educational attainment. the leadership of Chancellor May at UC Davis. We have a $1 billion project breaking ground. We landed our second sports team. So a lot of great opportunities going on in our community, I think, because we just have a different vision for ourselves in the past. And, you know, we're happy to be the little brother of San Francisco, but, you know, we have a merit offering on our own, and it's our responsibility to make sure we're contributing to the success of California. We also have much gains in our inclusion, and we've been doing a lot of transformational workforce development training around digital skills and other opportunities. So thanks for the underhanded pitch. Sorry, I blew it the first time.
And well, you know, and I'd add the notion of remote work, which I think was touched on by in context by a couple of you, is going to be really important. That now people in the future are going to have more of a chance to think about where they work, how often they work where they work, where they live, how where they live relates to where they work. So things are really changing. And I think strategically, you know, number one, it's going to be really important for us to provide a better menu of offerings. And, you know, I think each locality within the mega region is going to have to do its job thinking through, you know, where it fits in. For sure, you know, going back to that original slide that I think Jeff showed, showing that, you know, that freeway that's jammed up. When you have something like the pandemic and all of a sudden, you know, people, you know, there's going to be tremendous job disruption. So I wouldn't be very, very surprised to see huge traffic come as a result of people having to take, you know, kind of new jobs and new places and families headed in multiple directions and so forth. So, you know, I think one of the first jobs that we're going to have is to figure out very, very quickly how to get people back to transit and off our freeways, you know, as soon as possible. You know, let me give you each 30 seconds. I'll start with Barb. So what's in it for Oakland and the Bay Area and the mega region, you know, to see this go forward?
Well, I think you just said it, Jim. A better and stronger integrated system, a stronger opportunity for our own city to again, leverage our assets citywide, grow our economy. I mean, this idea that jobs may change, but our economies will grow. So we can maybe make up for some of that change in the way in which we work going forward. So really, it's just, it's upside at this point. And I think the other thing to underscore is the importance of having the dialogue and the discussion now, because if we're sitting here 10 years from now or 20 years from now and we haven't had it, and we're going to be in a rougher spot. So for me, it's upside, it's due diligence. And then it's just incumbent upon us at the local level to integrate that work into the work we're doing to make sure we grow our economy as well. And thank you for the opportunity for being here.
Thanks. Rob, you know, at one point, the Capital Corridor was kind of an extension. It was on the fringe. Now you're in the middle of this mega region. You know, how do you make that work going forward?
Yeah, we're excited to be a part of this this effort. And, you know, I would say to Barry and Barbara, you know, we are a key link. It is far, far easier to get between Sacramento and Oakland on the train. You get to work the whole time with our fantastic Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to remember that our cities are built with the assumption that we have good rail service. So if the Northern California region is going to prosper, we have to make sure that we're aggressive about continuing to look forward and having a vision for this improvement in the future.
Hey, Barry, when the Kings and the Warriors play, is it going to become just normal for people to, you know, be able to go to the game no matter who they're a fan of or where they live?
Well, that's my hope. That's always my core value, you know, so I'm trying to sneak into the Kings games now, but they won't let me. But, you know, but I'm, you know, I've been here long enough now to where I'm both a Warriors and a Kings fan.
There you go. So you got to be flexible. Bob, I'll let you close it out. Exciting times for BART, very, very challenging. And how do you see this fitting into BART's overall picture and how you focus your board in the future?
Yeah, or, you know, it's how I focus my board and how I, you know, it's how I get up in the morning. You know, any great, Jim, I was thinking about the question you asked, and any great area, city, area, whatever you want to term, you know, look at London, look at Shanghai, you know, it's a great area to live. It's got great economics. You know, the underpinning of any one of those areas is the transportation network. It is, right? I mean, check around and it is absolutely true. and that's where we want to be in 2040, this mega region, Northern California. And it's going to start with transportation and land use. And, it's an exciting time. We need to start talking about this now. And you're right. So, somebody made the comment, it's going to be a little bit of time to get there. And I agree with that. But we're all going to take this thing and move it forward, and we're going to hand it off to the next generation of people, and it's going to be a little further along, and then bam, it'll be there for the next generation. And I think this team and this group that we have right now in the mega region are the ones suited to get this fire started a little bit. I mean, maybe a bad metaphor here, but get this thing going, and so we can hand it off.
Yeah, thank you. And we have groups working on the mega region strategy that go from the kind of organizations that that we run, that are business and civic organizations, to the the councils of government that are collectively part of the overall system in the Bay Area, in San Joaquin, and in Sacramento. And so I've never seen this kind of cooperation and excitement before to create something at this kind of scale. And I think the slide that Greer Cowan showed earlier, and that you just referred to, Bob, of the great regions of the world and the kind of transportation systems they have, this is our time, I think, to really kind of live up to the challenge that we've created for ourselves. So I want to thank all of the participants, Sadie and Camille, for your presentations, Jeff and Greer. We didn't get a chance to get to all of your questions, but there were some really good ones. We did as much as we could in a short period of time. And thanks for your participation, your attention to this, and we'll be certainly doing all that we can to continue to promote this work. It's very, very exciting, and thank you for all being part of our new mega region family. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And have a safe day. Thank you.
Thanks,
so
Jim.
much.